Hi, in this video, we are going to talk about type definitions. So in order to type definitions, let us quickly consider one scenario. For example, you are developing an application in which you have a student database and you have created a cluster in order to embed your student database in a cluster, right? So in this cluster, which is named as student data, we have the name of the student, whether the student is pass or fail, or the third field that we have inserted over here is marks of science subject, right? And you have created a very medium to large scale application in which, since it's a student data, so it must be replicated throughout this application or throughout this project, right? So what you will do is you will directly copy and paste the cluster, right? And this cluster will not be limited to a single instance. So you must be using this cluster in this vi, you must be using this cluster in another vi, or in third vi, or in fourth vi. So this student data cluster has been used throughout the application, right? This is a very basic or very generic requirement or the scenario that we face in our application. But let's suppose what happens if in future you don't have to provide only the science marks, but you also have to provide the mathematics mark. So what you will do is you will go to numeric control, you will name it as mathematics, sorry, mathematics marks, right? And you will insert this into this cluster. But what happen is you have to do it in each and every cluster, or in each and every instance of this cluster that has been used throughout your project, right? So for example, you have used this cluster like 100 of instances in your application, right? So then it will be a very tedious task to, in front of me we have only 4 clusters, but let's suppose a scenario when we have hundreds of instances in our project. Then what you have to do is you have to copy this mathematics mark cluster, sorry, element, and you have to insert in every cluster, right? This is a very tedious job. So in order to eradicate this situation, in order to create a solution, create a project in such a way that we encounter or we resolve this issue from the starting of the project. So to do this, we have to use type definitions. So this is a very basic scenario in which we understand why should we use type definitions. So you consider, let's suppose you have created a project and you have created one enum, right? And in enum you have defined 6 values. Now in our last video we understood what enums are. So in that enum you defined 6 values, right? And you have used that same enum throughout your project, and you have 200 300 of instances of that enum. And now you have to add one extra case or one extra item in that enum. What will you do? So this is the only reason why we use type definitions, in order to resolve this issue proactively, right?